Hello everyone. Today I will recap you a movie titled Gifted. So make some tea and we'll start. A 7-year-old girl Mary Adler lives in a small town in Florida. Uncle Frank adopted her after the death of his younger sister, Mary's mother. The film starts quite normally. Frank prepares breakfast before school for his niece. This is Mary's first school day, and she is not at all delighted with it, as she is sure that nothing new will be taught there. Trying in every possible way to persuade her uncle to leave her at home, the girl mentions her one-eyed cat, which there will be no one to take care of in her absence. Frank remains adamant and leads Mary to the school bus. After a parting speech, the uncle sincerely asks the girl not to stand out and be like everyone else. Next door to the Adlers lives Roberta, a kind woman and the only friend of a little girl. After learning that the girl has gone to school, she runs to Fred's house and persuades him to pick Mary up from school before it's too late. However, Frank stands firmly on his ground and says that the girl just needs to communicate with her peers. Already at school, Mary lies on the desk with a bored look, while the rest of the children in chorus answer simple questions like, "How much will be 2 plus 2?" At one point, the girl can't stand it and states that the examples are too simple. Then Miss Stevenson makes her a remark, asks her to get up and begins to ask more and more complex mathematical examples, up to those that she herself can only calculate with the help of a calculator. The student easily copes with them, surprising the teacher. In the next lesson, the kids are introduced to the school principal. Mary clarifies who's in charge here and starts yelling at the principal, ordering to call Frank and pick her up from school. At the end of the school day, Frank picks up the girl from school and teacher Mary approaches him. The woman says that his niece is a genius, as she solved very complex mathematical problems at the age of 7. Frank convinces Miss Stevenson that Mary is an ordinary girl who just mastered the method of quick counting. Frank works as a boat repairman and often takes his niece with him to work. The girl apologizes for her behavior at school and asks her uncle to ride a boat. By the end of the day, Mary expresses her feelings about the school to Frank, afraid not to find friends there. Gradually, she begins to adapt to school and shows her one-eyed cat Fred in the tell and show lesson. In the next math lesson, the teacher gives the children tasks that Mary copes with in a couple of moments. Then Miss Stevenson gives the girl an additional task with tasks for high school. Mary copes with them in a couple of minutes. After lessons, Bonnie Stevenson decides to find information about Frank's father and accidentally comes across an article about Mary's mother, Diana Adler, a mathematical genius who worked on one of the most difficult problems in the world, Navier-Stokes equation, and committed suicide because she no longer saw the point in life. Earlier, Bonnie's friend mentioned that she often sees Frank at the Ferg's bar, so in the evening Miss Stevenson goes there to find out everything about her student. Frank said that Mary's mother wanted to talk to him on the evening of her suicide, but the young man was late for a date, and when he returned he found the body of his sister and sleeping niece. Adler's father died, and his mother turned away from Diana after the news of her pregnancy. That's why Frank brings up the girl on his own. He is afraid that Mary will repeat the fate of her mother, so he wants to provide the girl with an ordinary childhood. The next day, Mary witnesses a mockery of her classmate Justin, which as a result destroyed his school project. She immediately stands up for him and breaks the bully's nose. Frank is called to school for his niece's misconduct. The principal explains that at this school they cannot provide education at a sufficient level and proposes to transfer the girl to an academy for the same gifted children, promising to provide a full scholarship. However, the uncle is categorically against it, justifying that it is primarily important for a child to grow up to be a good and kind person. In class, Miss Stevenson asks Mary to get up and make a speech in front of the class. The girl apologizes for her behavior and in the end adds that Justin's project was the best in the class. Approaching the house, Mary notices an unfamiliar woman on the doorstep of their house. The woman turned out to be Mary's grandmother, Miss Evelyn. She gave the girl a new MacBook. But not for nothing. It was wearing the rarest mathematical book. Mary replies that she has already read it and even advanced further. Frank's behavior shows that he is annoyed by the behavior of his mother, who only needs Mary's knowledge and nothing else. He sarcastically thanks her and escorts her to the car, trying not to pay attention to her moral teachings. Having arranged a meeting, Frank and his mother meet in a cafe. Evelyn is diligently trying to convey to her son that the girl needs training corresponding to her gift. Frank understands that Mary's grandmother only thinks about her granddaughter continuing Diana's business and denying her again. Evelyn threatens to go to court and leaves. Mary is fully occupied with her studies and refuses Frank's offer for a walk. Uncle pulls her out into the street, where they spend time together. Evelyn comes to the court session with her lawyer Aubrey, who accuses Frank of illegal custody of the child and improper living conditions. Aubrey claims that Mary should live with her grandmother. Frank's defender Greg explains that Mary's adoption by Frank was the last wish of the deceased Diana. The court listens to Greg's arguments and allows Frank to keep the girl. Frank asks his neighbor to look after his niece, and he goes to the bar where he meets Boney. They have a good time together playing the truth for a drink, and continue the evening at Frank's house. In the morning, half-naked Boney meets her student and feels very embarrassed. It turns out that Mary violated the contract, the condition of which was that the girl did not come home on Saturday morning so that her uncle could safely lead his personal life. That's why Frank falls on Mary, scolding her for this offense. Later, of course, he apologizes to his niece. Mary is sent to Grandma's Boston for the weekend. Evelyn shows her granddaughter family photos and tells the story of her life. Grandma takes Mary to Boston University, where a complex equation has already been prepared for her to test the girl's abilities. However, Mary looks silently at the board, and the professor realizes that the girl has no gift. Evelyn is angry that the professor gave such a complex equation to a 7-year-old child, but Mary states that the equation is simple, it is simply insoluble because of a degree error. Grandma brings her back to the audience, where Mary corrects the mistake and easily solves the equation, surprising adults. After the weekend, Evelyn brings her granddaughter home and goes back. Mary admits that she likes her grandmother, but she doesn't want to live with her, as she behaves like a commander. Frank smiles and promises that he will never let the girl go. Evelyn brings Mary's biological father to the second court session, who has never seen his daughter, but claims that he has been actively looking for her all these years. In defense of Frank, Greg directly at the trial asks the girl's father to enter her name in the search engine, and it turns out that Dad doesn't even know Mary's full name. These arguments convince the judge. Mary was very upset that her dad was in town and didn't even visit her. To cheer up his niece, Frank brings her to the hospital, where he shows how happy families are when they learn about the birth of a child. He tells his niece that when she was born, they were also happy. This significantly cheered up the girl. She takes Roberta's hand and pulls her to have fun with the rest of the people. At the third court session, Greg asks Evelyn questions about her daughter's youth, leading to the fact that it was she who brought Diana to suicide, limiting her freedom and personal life. Evelyn loses her temper, saying that despite her problems, Diana herself was responsible for her talent. Lawyer Evelyn Orgy, in turn, accuses Frank of not a permanent job and insurance for his niece. He talks about Frank's detention by the police and the fact that he repeatedly refused Mary's specialized training. The court again postpones the final decision. In the evening, Greg explains to Frank that the court will take Evelyn's side because of her money, so he offers to compromise and give the girl to the foster family agreed by the two parties. Mary will go to a private school and see her uncle and grandmother, and after her 12th birthday, the girl will decide who to stay with. Frank agrees for no other choice. The foster family is half an hour's drive from Frank's house. The new guardians support Frank and even agree to take Mary's favorite cat. The day of farewell is coming. Mary is very disappointed that Frank did not keep his promise not to abandon her. She tearfully begs her uncle not to leave, but Frank runs out of the house with difficulty holding back tears. On the appointed day, Frank comes to the foster family, but father informs him that Mary refuses to see him because of severe emotional stress. Roberta is waiting for him at home, silently supporting her neighbor and sharing sadness with him. By chance, Boney notices announcements that a cat named Fred got into a stray animal shelter and reports it to Frank. The young man immediately goes to the orphanage, where he finds out that his niece's beloved cat got here because of Evelyn. He takes a few cats with him and goes to Mary's foster family. It turns out that Grandma secretly trains the girl in the guest house. Uncle runs out after his escaped niece and apologizes to her, admitting that he made a huge mistake by giving her to the foster family. Frank gives Evelyn the completed Navier-Stokes equation, admitting that Diana was able to solve it during her lifetime. But the only condition for the publication of this work was Evelyn's death. Frank offers his mother to exchange Diana's works for custody of Mary, to which she agrees. Frank, along with Mary and Roberta, return home. Finally, Uncle agreed to send Mary to higher mathematics courses, which she is very happy about. Mary also attends the high school, spends a lot of time with her friends and family.